Well, as the headlines have reported in the last few days, 3 American banks have collapsed. Nothing like this has happened since the global financial crisis in 2008. Bank depositors right across the world are getting cold feet. They aren't sure whether they can trust the banks to pay back their deposits. Many are now questioning whether hiking interest rates to kill inflation is the best path forward, given these 3 US banks couldn't handle a measly 4.5% cash rate. Now remember, many banks are at risk because they made the false and reckless assumption that low interest rates would last forever. Banks want customers, suck them in with low interest rates using depositors' money. But depositors can ask for their money to be repaid at any time. A bank like Silicon Valley was investing in long-term assets that it was unable or unwilling to sell. When interest rates rose quickly, the bank was saddled with losses. The simple story here is that Australian and US banks operate under a broadly similar system. Funds in banks are guaranteed by the government here to the tune of $250,000 per head per bank. Likewise, America, $250,000 US dollars. But with SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank, when it came to the crunch, the $250,000 per head was not enough. The Biden administration stepped in to promise all funds on deposits would be refunded. Note the depositors are refunded, shareholders and others just whistle. The taxpayer, though, coming to the party again. Surely governments have an obligation to make sure that imperfect banking practices don't go unpunished. There's a further standout part, though, in all of this. The first and largest bank to fall, Silicon Valley Bank, may well be the most woke bank in the world. This is no coincidence. Silicon Valley was a climate bank. It lent billions of dollars to over 1,550 technology firms working on solar, hydrogen and battery storage projects. In its 2022 ESG report, Environment, Social and Governance, the bank said it, quote, aims to support companies that are working to hasten the transition to a sustainable, low-carbon, net-zero emissions economy, unquote. I wonder if the fate of Silicon Valley Bank would have been different if it had lent the money to coal miners instead of climate activists. Perhaps then the deposits they needed would have kept on coming as the profits flowed in. The bank also committed to investing a whopping $5 billion by 2027 to support, quote, sustainability efforts. In its European offices, the bank held a month-long Pride celebration and promoted safe spaces. Meanwhile, it didn't have a chief risk operator for 8 months, while it invested clients' money in low-interest government bonds that are now worthless since rates began to rise. And once the bank finally got around to appointing a chief risk officer for Europe, Africa and the Middle East, they picked a nut. Her name, Jay Ursapar. She describes herself as a queer person of colour from a working class background. In a corporate document for the bank, she said, I feel privileged to help spread awareness of lived queer experiences and partner with charitable organisations, unquote. How about protecting depositors' money, Jay? As the saying goes, go woke, go broke. And pardon me for being alarmist, but it looks like the United States could be going down the same path as Silicon Valley Bank. Cop this. The US Financial Stability Oversight Council, that's the body created after the financial crisis in 2010, which was meant to avert just this sort of collapse, last met in February. The minutes of the meeting show that one of the council's key priorities is, quote, climate-related financial risks, unquote. According to Fox, the council describes climate change as, quote, an emerging threat to US financial stability, unquote. Climate change is also identified in its 2022 annual report as, quote, a key priority. Climate change, a key priority. Not protecting depositors' money and securing for depositors an appropriate return. So, who's going to pull these banks into line? What did Margaret Thatcher once say? The enemy is within. And so it is with America and Australia. Woke corporations, woke politicians, woke media, and dare I say, woke voters who swallow all this stuff.